How the Mighty Fall. I went straight from Nina LaCour's best book, Hold Still, her debut from 2009, to her absolute worst book. Hands down, this is the worst one. Yerba Buena. This is from 2022. This is her most recent book that isn't a children's book. She's been writing children's book the last couple of years. I haven't read any of those. I might read them. I've read basically all of Nina LaCour's books at this point. I have one more to go. One YA novel left. This is her first adult novel. It's not good. It's real bad. Oh boy. Oh boy. Good news for We Are Okay, which is not an okay book. That book is also pretty sucky, but it's better than this one. So We Are Okay is no longer the worst, horror book in my eyes. It is this one. This is just gonna be a rant. This isn't gonna be structured. I'm just gonna talk about all of the things I hated. I took a bunch of notes on all the things I hated because it was bad. It was so bad. Oh boy. Okay, so We Are Okay is really boring because it takes place over the course of a weekend, and it's one girl and she has clinical depression and she's really lonely. She has like one friend with her, but that whole book is just her in her head thinking about how sad she is. Nothing happens. This book is boring because too much happens and none of it is relevant. There's so much happening that you can't fit it into a book without just glossing over it. Half of the things in this book are just told to you. We don't see it in scene. You are just getting a lot of information. This follows two point of views, two different characters, and like their whole tragic backstory spanning years and years of time. And it is just, it's a lot happening. Half of it you don't care about at all. Half of it's not relevant to like the present day plot of the book. You get all of these flashbacks. The flashbacks come in and out. Sometimes it's kind of confusing to follow. You spend most of this book just wondering, when is the plot gonna start? I would say the first half of this book is like pure exposition. And it's just like told to you. You get some scenes. I think Sarah's plotline is a little more interesting to follow than Emily's. Emily's is very boring in comparison, but Sarah's is like very traumatic and overly sad, and worse than the description makes it out to be. Definite content warnings for this. There's a lot of drug mention, drug dealing, drug use. There's sexual assault, sex work with a minor. There's death of friends, loved ones, family. There's a lot going on. It's very traumatic. And then Emily is just like just like a disappointment. She's not graduated from college yet. She's on her 7th year and her 5th major. She doesn't know what she wants to do with her life. And she doesn't feel like a fully realized adult. And she, just doesn't have her stuff together, which is fine, but is boring in comparison to the girl who had to run away from home at 16 because her parents are dealing drugs and dying, and her girlfriend's dead from a drug overdose, and she's trying to like save her little brother, and there's a lot going on over here. And then Emily's storyline just feels like just not as important at all. From the description of this book, it sounds like a romance. It's these two women who meet in this restaurant. One of them is the bartender. One of them does the flower arrangements. And so you think that there is just going to be a present day book where they're in this restaurant and they're talking to each other and flirting, and then they fall in love, and that's that. And then, since the description of the book tells you that they both have these traumatic pasts, then you would expect them to, bond, realize that they've both suffered trauma, be able to talk about it with each other and come together and help each other heal and just grow as people, and, have a support system within each other. None of that happens. Not really, and not on the page, not in a satisfying way. This is not a romance. These two characters barely interact at all, and the romance is subpar, let me tell you. I would not call this a romance novel. It's tagged romance. Technically there is a romance, but it is not the forefront of this book. This book is two completely different storylines that just barely intersect. They just touch little concave lines that just kind of meet just a little bit, but are completely separate for the most point. These characters barely interact. So they see each other at this restaurant, and it is just insta-love. They just instantly feel this connection for absolutely no reason whatsoever, even at a point in their lives where they have so much going on. Neither of these characters is like thinking about love or seems like they're very open to love, and finding a partner that doesn't seem like something they want. Again, they got more important things going on. But anyway, they just see each other in this restaurant and then they just fall in love. For some reason, they recognize that this person is going to be a major person in their lives for no reason whatsoever. And the first time they see each other, they don't interact. Like, they can't. They just see each other, and then it's like months later, they're both at the restaurant again, and then they end up talking and going home with each other, and they have a one-night stand. And somehow that progresses into a relationship despite this one-night stand being just ridiculously unimportant. There's a scene at the end of it where Emily cuts her foot on a piece of broken glass and she's like bleeding and she's like, I have to go to the hospital. Sarah, will you please take me to the hospital? But Sarah's just gotten this phone call about her brother being in jail, and she's like, I'm not taking you to the hospital, it's just a cut, bro. And then she just fucks off and leaves Emily to get to the hospital by herself, which is fucked up. And Emily at this point doesn't realize that Sarah's just gotten this terrible phone call and she's like in shock, and she doesn't understand why that's the reason Sarah isn't taking her to the hospital. She's just had this random one-night stand with this stranger, and she's like, can I go to the hospital, please? And the stranger's like, no, fuck you, I'm not taking you to the hospital. And Emily is just like, man, I really want to see her again. She feels like someone really important to me. And I'm like, that's a red flag. I think you should maybe not talk to that woman again. Even though we as the reader know that Sarah was just traumatized and like had another thing going on, and her brother's really important to her, so she's worried about her brother and she can't focus on this mentally. So we understand that, but Emily doesn't understand that. So I don't know why Emily was so in love with this woman who seemingly just was completely unconcerned about her health and safety. Again, they do talk about this later and it comes up, but like, Emily should not have talked to this woman again. Emily should not have sought this woman out. She should have been like, that was a weird date. I think I went on a date with like a serial killer who does not care about people and is unempathetic, and I probably need to stay away from that woman. And instead she's like, I'm sure it was just a misunderstanding, which it was, but there's no reason for Emily to think that, so that was not very smart. And then I'm gonna spoil the end of the book, because I don't care. This book was bad, don't read it. I'm just gonna spoil it. I don't care if it ruins your reading experience, because I don't want you to have a reading experience. I read this so you don't have to. I wasn't expecting this. The very final lines of this book, they finally sort of get together again. They've been dating for a while, but then Sarah has to go home. Her dad died. She has to leave for a bit, and Emily's doing her own thing for a bit, and then they reconnect, and Emily is like, is this gonna work out? No. The narration actually gives you like what I think is a canonical insight into their future where they are going to break up. And it's either like literally a canonical omniscient narrator is telling you they're gonna break up, or it's Emily being like, yeah, we're probably gonna break up. This probably isn't gonna work out. I should probably know better, and I probably, just shouldn't pursue it. But you know what? She's here right now, and I am gonna pursue it. It's like, why would you write that like that? Because one, you've spoiled the romance. It's not a romance. They're gonna break up. They're gonna be together for a little bit and then break up, which admittedly is realistic because I don't think these two really have bonded that much. They like hang out for a couple weeks and it seems like pretty casual. Yeah, they like each other, but I don't see them like falling in love, getting married. They do say they're in love, which is also ridiculous, or at least Emily says she's in love. No, she's not. So it's realistic that they're probably going to break up, but why would you write that at the end of your novel? And then it ruins Emily's character, because she's like, this is a stupid decision and I'm gonna make it anyway. So it's like, why do you want your final image of your character to be like, this bitch has not learned her lesson? That's not what books are. You're supposed to learn things and grow and make better choices. That's what books are. That's not what a book is. While it's maybe realistic in the fact that yeah, people do that. People make bad decisions. They choose bad partners. They choose to stay with people that they know they're not gonna be with forever. But like that's not what books are. That's not what books are. Emily's also kind of dumb and there's this dumb plot line about interior design. Personally, this is my prejudice. I hate interior design. I hate interior designers. It's such a shallow thing. And I mean that in like people who are like, I'm gonna change the flooring. I want my floors to be a different color. Just, for fun. Just to like do something different. It is so shallow. If you're not interior designing for functionality, fuck off. I don't get it. I don't like interior design. I don't like interior design. I'll say it. So Emily does this thing. She's clinically depressed, by the way. This is not said in the book in so many words, but she at one point has a conversation with her friends where she's like, do you guys ever feel like, it's like there's a mist all around us, but the mist is solid and you have to like trudge through it, and every second of life is like walking through this heavy mist and you never get any relief and everything's terrible all the time. And her friends are like, no, we don't feel like that actually. You should do something about that. But they don't actually say you should do something about that. They just like completely ignore the fact that their friend clearly has clinical depression and is not being treated for it. And instead of telling her to get therapy, they encourage her unreasonable, illogical solution to her clinical depression, which is interior design. She has this apartment and she at one point spends like $700 on a table. Again, she's like a broke college student at this point, and she's spending $700 on a table, which is stupid for another reason. But she spruces up her space because she thinks that's gonna lighten her mood. She likes to paint things bright colors and do these bold designs because she thinks it's gonna like cure her depression that she never admits that she has and never gets help for throughout the entire book. But it doesn't work. Like the first time you say this, she's doing this in her new apartment, she gets these things, and it's like there's an instant gratification in the moment where she's like, yeah, I really like this new table. But then something happens in the apartment, she has to move, and she just like leaves a bunch of her stuff, doesn't care. Obviously the interior design was not that important to her, did not cure her depression. She moves into like her grandma's shed. Like her grandma has a guest house or something. And she's like, yeah, I'm gonna paint it. I'm gonna spend all my time and money, renovating this guest house and painting it bright yellow so that I can feel better. Doesn't work. Doesn't cure her depression, by the way. And then there are her friends who know she's depressed, who I mean, they don't say that either, but like, if your friend says that to you, you're like, have you maybe thought about therapy? But no, instead of telling her to go to therapy, they help her paint this guest house. And it doesn't cure her depression. And so we've established twice, rules of 3 here. We've seen twice that interior design does not improve this woman's life. So maybe, for the 3rd time she has an option, she inherits her grandmother's house. Her grandma dies, she inherits the house. She's like, should I fix this place up and do a big interior design project? And rule of 3s would show, logically, in a better book, should be like, okay, it didn't work the first time, it didn't work the second time, maybe the 3rd time I will grow from these other experiences, and I will realize that this isn't the solution to my problems. But in this book, suddenly, it is now the solution to her problem. Her thing is that she's changed her major a million times, she doesn't know what she wants to do with her life, and then guess what? She wants to be an interior designer and she's found her passion, and she knows what she wants to do with her life now. Even though it has literally never helped her in any stage of her life. Now she's an interior designer. Suddenly that's the solution, despite that literally never being the solution. Great writing. It's not good writing. Oh boy, I have to read all these notes. I took too many notes. I could have taken more. There was a lot to yell about. Emily, there's a whole storyline of her having this affair with this married man, this restaurant owner that she works for. She does the flower arrangements for them. Literally, the day she starts the affair, right before the affair happens, she's been hanging out with this guy, she likes him, he's good company, but she's literally thinking to herself, in the past I've really only been with women, mostly. I don't think I really like men, and I don't think I really see him that way. He's got a wife, you know, I probably don't want this to be a romantic relationship. And then he comes over that evening and she's like, yeah, I'll sleep with him. And so she starts this affair with this married man that she just said she wasn't really that interested in. And then that doesn't matter. That doesn't go anywhere. And then she's also got this backstory to this backstory about how she used to date her professor, this woman who was only a couple of years older than her. I don't think they were dating while she was in her class, but it was like after she left the class, but she was still enrolled at the university. But then the professor dumped her because she's like, you've been here for 7 years, like you're supposed to be out of university by now. I don't want to get in trouble for dating a student. Like you should have graduated already, and then we could have been together just fine. But dumps her. Get that doesn't matter. That's not really relevant. You just get these people's whole life stories for no reason. In a better book, in any other Nina LaCour book, Nina LaCour is better at pacing than this. I've never read a Nina LaCour book where everything is just exposition like this. I've never read a Nina LaCour book with a bad starting point. Oh my god, it just drones on about all of these things in their lives that don't really matter. And I don't know why this wasn't just in the present tense, where we open on these two women meeting and working regularly in this restaurant and then bonding over time and then telling these stories about their backstories to each other to bond with each other, and then we know all of the relevant information of their backstories and we get where they come from and we get their trauma, but in the present tense, in a way that makes sense, in a way that isn't just force-fed exposition. I don't know why Nina LaCour did this. She is a better writer than this. None of her books are this bad. I don't know what happened. And all of those other books I read were written before this. This is her most recent, not children's book, like I said. So she's just gotten worse at writing. I don't know if this was rushed. I don't know who told her to do this. I don't know if she was just experimenting with something different. She should stop doing that. This was structurally by far her worst book. This was bad, and I know she's better than this. So you just get all these details that don't matter, and it's weird. So that's Emily's storyline. She doesn't know what she wants to do with her life, and then she becomes an interior designer, despite interior design doing nothing for her ever. And then she gets into a relationship with a woman who she's going to dump in the future. I don't know. Okay, good luck, Emily. Emily's boring. Sarah's a hot mess. Not her fault. She was born into a hot mess of a situation. So we meet Sarah when she's 14. She's in a secret relationship with her best friend Annie. And then we jump forward 2 years. Annie's dead. She died of a drug overdose, and her body was dumped in the river by someone. She doesn't know who, but she knows drugs were involved, and drugs were also involved in her mom's death, and her dad is a drug dealer. And the day she finds her dead girlfriend, she's like, I just have to leave. I need to get out of town. I'm gonna drop out of high school, just go to anywhere. She meets this guy, Grant, I think is his name. He's another kid. He got kicked out of his house for being gay by his parents. So he's got a tragic backstory. They bond. He wants to go to LA. So Sarah's like, yeah, sure, I'll go to LA. Just get me out of here. They need money. So they're like, they sell their bodies for money. That's a very tragic, traumatic scene. Although I could have swore at one point early on it said that Sarah was working in like a motel, like helping out at a motel. So I thought she would have some money saved up, but apparently she has no money. But maybe I misread something, because the beginning was sort of confusing because you're kind of going back and forth in these little time jumps, and it was hard to follow at first. So I thought Sarah had a job, but then she needed money desperately, and I'm like, don't you have money from your job? But I guess maybe she didn't have a job and she was just hanging out at the motel, because I don't know, she meets Grant and he's like a homeless kid digging through the trash, and then she lets him shower in the motel. So I feel like she works at the motel, but she has no money saved up. Maybe she's just like helping the lady at the hotel. I don't know. I don't remember. I don't care enough to reread this and go back and figure it out. But anyway, so they have this big struggle trying to get to LA. And then once they get to LA, or like not even actually not before they get to LA, it just like skips a bunch of months and it's like, yeah, we've been in LA for a few months when we stayed at a shelter and the shelter helped us get jobs. And it's like that was so much of the story at that point. And it's just glossed over. It's in like this big exposition dump because you can't fit everything into this book. It goes back and forth between scenes and exposition. I feel like Emily's backstory had more exposition that's just info dump telly instead of showy. Sarah's earlier moments have some good like in scenes where you're like watching her make these very hard decisions about money and in these very traumatic situations, and you're a bit more invested in Sarah from the beginning. And a lot of Sarah's scenes are more important to her story overall than Emily's. Some of the scenes sometimes though are like not relevant, or like they think they're doing something but they're not really doing something. There's a scene later where Emily is just in the grass at her grandma's yard or something, and she's looking up and she's watching the planes fly overhead, and it's supposed to be like this magical moment where she sees these planes in a whole new way, and it, you know, blows her mind. But it's not relevant to the story. Like the book thinks it's being poignant and like saying something, metaphors, or like taking downtime to, you know, have this moment of Emily experiencing some amount of small joy in her terrible life. But really it adds absolutely nothing to the book, especially not the plot. And there's so much going on that we don't have time for this bullshit. So there are like some wasted scenes that just don't add up, don't matter, aren't relevant. But more of Sarah's are relevant because, again, her backstory is more interesting, and the end of the book, a lot of that is about her going home again and dealing with the death of her father, who was a terrible person, and just seeing, you know, the river where they dumped Annie's body and getting closure about Annie's death and who killed her. And so that's more relevant to the plot than Emily's bullshit. But anyway, Sarah magically gets to LA and she gets these jobs. There's a point where she gets an apartment. Like she has the opportunity to get an apartment. She's staying at the shelter with Grant, and she's going to invite Grant to live with her because they've been best buddies. They did this trip together. And then she just like doesn't, like she goes to the shelter to see Grant and tell him, hey, I got an apartment, we're gonna live there. And then she just tells him, hey, I got an apartment. And he's sort of like down about it and jealous, like, oh yeah, everything's going great for you, it's not going as good for me. And instead of being like, no, this is for both of us, you're coming with me, she just doesn't say it for no reason. And then she kind of feels bad about it later, but it's like, why did she not say it? Why did she not invite him? That was stupid, and it didn't make any sense. It was not there for any reason. And then we hardly ever see Grant again. Like we know what happens to him at the very end, but actually Emily finds out what happens to him, and I presume she tells Sarah, but it's not even 100% confirmed that Emily knows she's seeing Grant. We know she's seeing Grant because he has a chipped tooth, and that gets mentioned. And I think Emily recognizes that that's Grant, and she'll probably tell Sarah that, hey, he's got a husband and a baby now, he looks like he's doing good. But we don't see Sarah get that resolution, and we don't see Sarah meet him again and apologize for leaving him behind, or like reconnect with him as best friends. Not a satisfying ending to that storyline. So not the greatest writing choice there. But anyway, I hated this. Sarah ends up getting a job as a bartender. She loves bartending. She's like the greatest bartender. She makes these fancy drinks. She ends up working for this restaurant, but she's not just one of the bartenders. The owner of the restaurant's been trying to like poach her for years. And he's like, you don't even have to work here, you could just make our menu, you're such a cocktail genius. I didn't buy that she would be a bartender. Why is she making cocktails? Her whole traumatic backstory is that her girlfriend died of a drug overdose, her mom died of a drug overdose, her dad is selling drugs, all of her dad's terrible friends who were like abusing her were selling drugs. So why is she dealing substances now herself? And she loves this. She genuinely loves making cocktails and giving them to people and sharing them to people. And it's like, why would she do that? Why would someone who has all of this negative association with addiction and substance abuse enable people to drink more substances? Why would she want people to consume substances? Why would every single day she want to get up and give people what she knows is an addictive substance? Why would that character do that? That doesn't make any sense from a character perspective. So that didn't feel realistic. I didn't understand that choice. I don't know why she had to be a bartender. She could have done any job. Like, you could have written her with any job and that would have made more sense. Like, why is she doing this thing that has caused her so much grief? Addiction has done so much harm to her life. Why would she want to even be minorly associated around that? Even the possibility of that. And there's a point near the end of the book where she almost has a revelation about this. She sees her underage brother and his friends like mixing rum and coke and passing it around, and she's watching this. She's like, this is kind of sad and pathetic. You know, is this what I do? I just make drinks for people, and it's not that different to what my father did. My father sold drugs, and I'm basically selling an addictive substance too. It's just, you know, sweeter. I mix things with it so it's more palatable and more socially acceptable. And at that point I thought, oh, okay, we've learned something. We've grown, and she's gonna quit her job and do something else. No. Just like at the end of the scene, she's actually like, no, it's completely different. And then just keeps being a bartender. I don't know. Also doesn't stop her underage brother from drinking, by the way. There's one point earlier where they're all at a dinner party and she serves him a mocktail instead of a cocktail because she doesn't want to give her brother alcohol. But when she catches him drinking alcohol, she's just like, yeah, I'll just let all these minors drink in the living room. Whatever. You know, that's a responsible bartender mentality right there. Even though you know addiction runs in your family, and you probably shouldn't want your brother to be drinking alcohol, but yeah, just let him. It's fine. What could happen? What could go wrong? And then there's a weird point where the brother tries to defend the awful dad who was a drug dealer. He's like, Dad wasn't a monster. Because Sarah's like sort of forgotten about him. She has this tattoo with her signature and her brother's signature and her mom's signature that she looks at all the time. And it's based on this drawing the whole family did. And she left out her dad's signature intentionally because she doesn't like her dad. And then the brother at the end of the book tries to defend the dad like he wasn't a monster, but he was literally a monster. You find out at the end of the book, spoilers, because I don't care, I already told you I don't care. I will ruin this book for you. This book ruined the book for me. The book's bad. The book ruined itself. But you find out that the dead 16-year-old girlfriend who died of an overdose bought the drugs from Sarah's dad, overdosed in her house, and then instead of helping her, her dad didn't call an ambulance. He just waited for her to die and then dumped her body in the river. So her dad killed her best friend, and he didn't apologize. He didn't go to jail for this. He didn't confess. He just kept dealing drugs. And then he died a drug dealer who never faced any consequences for his actions. So he was definitely a monster. And the brother's like, he wasn't a monster and you can't leave him out of this family. Your tattoo's wrong. Dad's still a part of this family. And Sarah doesn't tell him off for this. She doesn't necessarily say, yeah, you know, I did kind of like Dad. She doesn't go get a dad tattoo, but she just like lets her brother say this like he wasn't a fucking monster. Weird choice, little guy. And then you find out the brother has also grown up to deal drugs, and that doesn't totally get resolved. I mean, she leads him down a different path where she's like, I'll let you enroll in like a technical school and we'll figure something out that's not you selling drugs. But I don't think he ever explicitly says, yeah, I'm gonna stop selling drugs now. So that's a fun storyline to not wrap up or to leave vague enough to just hope for the best. But the way, I'm still shocked by the way this book ended, where it's like, yeah, this relationship isn't gonna work out. So I'm like, you know, for all that storyline, it might as well be, yeah, he might go to technical college, but he'll probably just keep dealing drugs, you know? That's fun. I love that. I love a book with just no hope or joy. Just trauma after trauma and bad decisions and people knowing they're making bad decisions and just making them anyway. That's a good source of entertainment. What a good moral lesson to learn. What an entertaining book to read. Okay, I think I'm done. I think I've said enough. I don't know. There was probably something else I forgot, but it doesn't matter. This book's bad. Oh, the only good thing I can say about this book is the title is good. This is probably the best Nina LaCour title. Yerba Buena, it literally means good herb. I don't know how I didn't figure that out, but I didn't know what this meant going in. Apparently, it's a plant. They make tea out of it. Emily drinks it a lot, and Sarah uses it in cocktails. And the restaurant they work at is called Yerba Buena. And so this is actually a concrete title. I've criticized Nina LaCour for her just vague titles before. You know, We Are Okay, Hold Still, You Know Me Well. Those are just random phrases uh, that spring to mind no concrete image whatsoever, and you just have no idea what this book's about. At least Yerba Buena is like an actual concrete object that runs through this whole storyline that gets brought up again and again and connects these characters in some way. So I guess the title is good. And the color scheme on the cover is good. One of these characters is obsessed with green. Emily's obsessed with green. There's a line, she only buys green books. There's a line where she says she's designing the house, her grandma's house, and she's like, the house said it wanted to be green or whatever. I forget what it is. The tile, the house said it should have green in it. And I'm like, I hate you. Fucking interior design people, bro. But whatever, I guess the green color scheme works because it's a plant. It's a green plant and it comes up a lot, and I don't know. I was gonna say something about green being growth, you know, plants growth, but they don't grow very much. Not a good book. Not good. I have one more book to read. I can't think of the title. I don't know. Wish Me Well. No, that's not it. Watch Over Me. That's the last Nina LaCour book I have to read. Unless I want to start reading children's book, which I may. I don't know. I don't read a lot of children's books. I have no interest in children's books, but maybe. Just for the sake of reading every Nina LaCour book, which is apparently what I'm doing, I might read some of those children's books. They do seem to be gay. I do like the concept of having, you know, gay representation in children's books. But I have one more left. It can't be worse than this. So that's good. Watch Over Me cannot be worse than this. Please. There's no way, right? Right? That did come out in 2020, so it was before Yerba Buena. It's another YA novel. I think Nina LaCour's YA is mostly solid. Again, I didn't like We Are Okay, but I really liked Hold Still. And her other books have been pretty mid. So this book was just exceptionally bad. It was bad. It was not good. Not narratively satisfying. But a terrible start point, a bad romance, characters that weren't very likable and didn't make smart decisions and didn't grow throughout the book, weird info dumps, too much exposition, too much extraneous information. I don't know what Nina LaCour was thinking, because she's never thought like this before, and I hope she stops thinking like this. I don't know, man. I don't know. Wish me luck for Watch Over Me. Please watch over me while I read Watch Over Me.